So, I don't know if you heard, but the Fallout show is actually good. I know, weird, right? Because it's a video game adaptation and those are usually garbage. So obviously I had to watch it to see if this strange thing people were saying about it being good was true, and I have an announcement to make. Fallout slaps. Is genuinely the best video game adaptation I've ever watched. Granted, I never watched The Last of Us because zombies, but it's really good. This isn't a scripted video. I will maybe do a scripted video at some point later on some of the stuff I really liked about it, but I just wanted to give a sort of general overview of my thoughts on it, because it was good and I want to talk about it, and none of my friends have watched it yet. So we're just gonna sit with my morning coffee and we're just gonna have a chat, a coffee talk, if you will. I'll start without any spoilers, because there's a lot of stuff to spoil in this show, and I'm hoping that if you haven't watched it already, you will go and watch it, because it's definitely worth watching. But just in general, the show, the best way to describe it is that the show, it gets it. It understands Fallout on like a fundamental level. The people who made it, they clearly did their homework. There's clearly a lot of money behind it, to the point where, you know that thing that happens in adaptations like this, where they'll have like one or two props that they've designed to look like the game or whatever they're adapting, and you'll go, oh my goodness, it's that, and they'll have like these loving, lingering shots on that. They can't do that in the show, because every single frame of the show is just absolutely filled to the brim with stuff from the games. It goes beyond the point of being fan service. It's not really fan service, it's just like everything feels perfectly within the universe already. Like, I don't know, a Brahmin shows up, you know, the two-headed cows, and there's not like, oh my goodness, it's a two-headed cow, like from the games. It's just in the background of a shot at one point, and everything around it is like all the same food brands from the games, all looking exactly the same, all the robots look exactly the same. Everything looks like it just got ripped out of the games. The vibes are immaculate. It just, I don't know, it's just nice to see an adaptation that actually doesn't treat its source material like something to be ashamed of. It embraces both the serious parts of Fallout and the silly parts of Fallout, and that just makes it all work really well. When I say visuals, obviously, because I have to clarify this, it's based on the visual style of Fallout 4 and New Vegas. Not New Vegas, sorry. That's part of the things people are mad about. 76, it's based on that sort of like, very sort of, is it 50s or 60s? I think it's 50s. Or is it 60s? Fuck. Late 50s, early 60s aesthetic, let's just put it that way. But I'm fine with that because those games are gorgeous, especially Fallout 4. You can say what you will about the story of Fallout 4, but like the visuals of that game are great, and this is a really, really faithful adaptation of that visual style. And like, you might think it looks silly in live action, but it doesn't at all. It all just completely works. They've got like the big, bulky power armor, and it feels more powerful even than it does in the games. The show is quite gory, which usually I'm not a huge fan of gore, but it's very in keeping with how combat works in the games. It feels like every character has VATs on and they're making heads fly off and all that. It's not like serious graphic gore. It doesn't really linger on it. It's pulpy gore, which I think is the perfect tone to hit for this series. But obviously that's all background stuff. The thing that actually makes the show compelling is the characters, and the show has 3 main characters that they each have their own plots going on that kind of intertwine, and all 3 of them are very good, which is good. So we have the main girl, Lucy, who is a vault dweller. We have Maximus, who is a Brotherhood of Steel initiate. And then we have the Ghoul, as played by Walton Goggins, the big name draw of this show, I guess. And each of them are very different characters, and each of them are used to explore kind of different aspects of the Fallout universe and bring different perspectives to it, because you have the Vault Dweller, and she's all kind of naive and not understanding of how the wasteland works. And then you contrast her with the Ghoul, who's been around for 200 years, and he's been through all of this shit 100 times, and he's over it, and any kind of morality that he had is just out of the window because of the necessity of survival. And then you have Maximus, who's more used to kind of explore the Brotherhood of Steel, and something I like in this show that's not really a spoiler, I guess, is that the Brotherhood of Steel are back to being weird and kind of fascist, which is good. That's how they should be. The Bethesda games especially have this habit of portraying the Brotherhood of Steel as, like, flatly heroic, and that's just not... that's not the right vibe for these weird collecting weirdos with armor and knights and the post-apocalypse. They should be a little bit weird, and I think the show understands that a lot better than the recent Bethesda games do. Fallout 4 kind of gets there, but because you can join them, they still have to be, like, kind of heroic. Fallout 4 is complicated. But yeah, the character's really good. The acting is really good. Obviously, a lot of people are praising Walton Goggins in the show, which is true. He's doing a great job, especially since he is a ghoul and he's covered in prosthetics and he has a CGI missing nose, but he's still bringing his A game. But for my money, I think I can't remember the actress's name who plays Lucy. I'm gonna have to Google it. Ella Purnell. She is very good at capturing that kind of like 50s. I guess housewifey kind of vibe. She's just a very compelling protagonist. They all are. I think Maximus is the hardest to follow just because he's a bit weird, which is definitely intentional. Like, there's a lot of scenes of him kind of not... I don't know, there's some interesting contrast there between him and Lucy, which is that they're both kind of, they're both in these systems that are obviously bad, but neither of them have really realised that yet, and the story's about both of them realising that the systems they've grown up in are not everything that they've been built up to be. I'm curious to hear what non-Fallout fans think of the show, because I haven't really heard much of that yet, because the show is very, very Fallout, and I think it does a good enough job of explaining all of this stuff, but it doesn't really go into detail in what the Brotherhood of Steel is. It's because it is a weird concept to just throw in there, these knights, these medieval knights in this post-apocalyptic universe. It just kind of wants you to accept that. Likewise, a lot of the sort of dramatic irony of the story is based on knowing the fact that Vault-Tec, who made the vaults, are sinister and bad. The show gets into that quite a bit, which I think it does a good enough job of kind of establishing that if you don't know, but I would still be curious to hear if people followed along with this show without having at least some background on Fallout. Anything else I want to talk about pre-spoilers? I don't think so. I want to talk about spoilers, so if you haven't watched the show and you don't care, then you can keep going. If you do care, then you can pause the video here and go watch it. I think I've made it clear that I really enjoyed this show, so you should go do that. I know it means giving Amazon your money, but they're gonna get it anyway, so whatever. So, spoiler talk. I really, really enjoyed how this show brought Fallout back to what it should be, which is dark ironies and political satire, which Fallout 3 and 4 and 76 as well are really lacking in. They've got some of it. If people say it has none, there is some in there, it's just not at the forefront of the game. Like, a lot of the environmental details in Fallout 76 have that kind of, like, automation versus industry versus unions and all that going on. It's in there, but it's not the forefront of the story. But here is very much at the forefront. So, Walton Goggins' character, he was a pre-war kind of like Hollywood cowboy type, and he was married to a Vault-Tec executive. And the show kind of uses her as our framework into kind of just showcasing what Vault-Tec was actually doing pre-war. I suppose I should establish my background with Fallout, which is I started on Fallout 4 when that first came out and all the hype was surrounding it, because I was a big fan of Skyrim, and Fallout 4 is basically the sequel to Skyrim more than anything else. So I started with Fallout 4, I went back to play Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, although I've never been able to finish Fallout New Vegas. I will be trying again after this show, but that's a whole thing. I've written like 3 drafts of a script about how I can get into New Vegas, but none of them have ever been convincing to me, so I'll try it again and I'll try and get into it this time. We'll see. I've also played like 120 hours of Fallout 76 or whatever, enough to see the entire map. So I've never played the original games, the isometric titles, and I probably won't because they came out before I was born. And you know what? I'm sure people love them, but I have a cut-off point for games that I'm able to enjoy, and it's too old. I'm sorry. So, you know, I would describe myself as an adequate Fallout fan, and I have quite a bit of knowledge about those old Fallout games. I've kind of looked into them and the kind of story behind them, so I don't know nothing about them. I know quite a bit about them, but I've never played them myself. I don't need to hide things from you. I've watched, like, Noah Gervais' 9-hour Fallout video, like, 3 times, because it's very good. That's how I know all about information. But yeah, to my knowledge, back to the show, to my knowledge, the show has never directly shown that kind of pre-war Vault-Tec stuff and establishing, like, flat out that they are the ones who led to the drop of the bombs. And, I mean, I'm sure it's been in, like, audio logs and stuff, but with a TV show you can actually just show that, so. And it's not pulling its punches with who it's targeting. It's like, the fall of this war was not governments, it wasn't people, it was corporations. They have a big board of all the corporations, including Robert House, who was there, which people say the show is disrespecting Fallout New Vegas. Freaking Robert House is in it, so I don't know, man. Clearly whoever made this show was a big fan of New Vegas. But yeah, the show, it's direct, it's blunt, and that's good. I appreciated that scene because, like, the satire was, it just felt really Fallout that they have these board members and they're all just throwing out, spitballing ideas for these horrific vault experiments, and they've made it a little contest amongst themselves. That's perfectly dark and comedic at the same time, and just good. It's just good satire, and there's the obvious irony that it's a show produced by Amazon, so, like, they've been doing that a lot recently. It's a show where they're insulting themselves. It's some weird fourth dimensional chess they're playing on that one, but what are you gonna do? I'd rather that the show existed than not exist to spite Amazon, so whatever. Carpet overlords for us all. They open with the same plot as Fallout 3, which I've been replaying Fallout 3 in wake of watching the show because all the DLC was going cheap on Xbox, so I decided to pick up all the DLC and go back to play Fallout 3 and New Vegas. I'll get to it. But it starts with you're in a vault and then your dad leaves. In this show he gets kidnapped, but it's the same idea. The character goes out to find and rescue their dad, right? And where Fallout 3 plays that completely straight. Like, your dad, Liam Neeson, he's the nicest man ever. Everyone loves him. He's like this pinnacle and paragon of humanity who's trying to purify the water, and that's like the plot of Fallout 3. This game actually subverts it. Not game. I keep calling it a game. This show subverts that entire concept where at the end of the show, Lucy's dad is the main villain, and he's played by Kyle MacLachlan, who, he's only in 2 episodes of this show, but oh my god, he kills it so much. He's perfect as, like, this lovable, affable dad, and then perfectly, without even, like, missing a beat, that just suddenly becomes really sinister, just because we'll get into what he did, because I'm sure it's the most controversial part of this show, but oh, he's just so good. One of my favourite performances in the show. The core concept of the vault that they're in is that there's like 3 vaults tied together, and it's really gross when they reveal what the purpose of that is, because one of the vaults is just full of, it's the vault for the Vault-Tec employees, and they're all just frozen in there waiting for the day that they can reclaim the world, but every so often one of them unfreezes and goes into one of these other vaults to kind of, like, control them and kind of, how would I put this? Move the new society in the direction that they want it to be moved. And also to use it as their own personal breeding pool because they have arranged marriages and they've trained all of these people from birth to think that that's fine. It's totally messed up, but it's very Fallout. It's the kind of thing you can absolutely imagine of finding in a vault in one of these games. And same thing for Vault 4, which is the other vault that they find in the show, where it's a vault where they've kind of rebelled against this kind of a reveal, which I love, by the way, when all the stuff in Vault 4. Because it starts off and you're like, oh, it's a nice simple vault, and then they keep like twisting and turning on whether you can actually trust these people because you find out that the overseer is like a mutant. He only has one eye. He's like a cyclops. And then it turns out that he's not from the surface. He's an original vault dweller. And then it turns out that the people from the surface have this like weird cult ritual where they all get naked and cover themselves in ashes. And you're like, oh, this is like messed up stuff. And then you find the secret lab where there's videos of like pregnant ladies giving birth to monsters and all this messed up stuff. And then you get the triple reveal that all of this is fine, actually, because they're not doing the experiments anymore. They rebelled against the scientists, and there's this perfect video, which you can perfectly imagine finding in one of the games, where the scientists are being murdered by monsters, and they're like, actually, I think this idea still has lots of potential. It's silly, obviously it's silly, but it feels perfectly within the universe, and it's funny. But also the vault is where we discover probably the most controversial thing on the show, I have to imagine. They nuked Shady Sands. So, Shady Sands, it was one of the first settlements you find in the first game. By the second game, it's become a very major settlement in the capital of the NCR, which is one of the biggest and most important factions in Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas. It's basically the most stable civilization in Fallout, the New California Republic. Shady Sands, by the point of Fallout New Vegas, I guess, is like a thriving city with a population of like 20,000, which is massive for the wasteland. Essentially, the NCR are on the cusp of no longer being post-apocalyptic. It's becoming post-apocalyptic. And this show nukes them and essentially sends them back to the Stone Age again. Which I think there's some controversy with like the timelines of how that all lines up, but whatever, that's minor. I think the bigger thing is, I don't know if it necessarily destroys the NCR, but it severely weakens the NCR from like a world building perspective. And having not played Fallout 1 or 2, I don't have like that personal emotional connection to Shady Sands, but honestly, I think in terms of the story that's being told, it worked for me. I think there's a couple reasons for this, one of which is that the NCR are kind of too powerful. They're a setting-destroying faction in which if they become too powerful and they take over the wasteland, then it no longer becomes a wasteland, and you can't set games in it anymore because it just goes back to being civilization again, right? And then it's not, that you lose the draw of the games. So I understand why they'd want to do it from a keep the franchise going perspective. But moreover, it's revealed in the last episode that it was Lucy's dad who nuked Shady Sands because he was a Vault-Tec employee from pre-war, and Shady Sands was proof that they didn't need Vault-Tec's guidance, or that it was a civilization that wasn't governed by them, and that was the whole point, is they can nuke this, and then they can rebuild civilization in their image, and they can be all-powerful. And Shady Sands was success without them, and that was intolerable, so he nuked it. His logic is sinister and dark, but it makes perfect sense for this character and his motivations. And just, what a way to make viewers feel that loss, that this is what really was a tragedy, because this was a place that they knew. This was potentially a place that they helped create. I think there's a really, really effective use of music when they're talking about Shady Sands, which is The show has good music all throughout. It's got all of the classic, like, 50s show tunes, including several that they've already used in the games, but whatever, it's fine. But throughout all of the show, it's very, very sparing with the actual, what I would consider to be the Fallout theme. You know, the one that plays in all the menus. It goes like this. It doesn't actually play at all until, like, the 5th episode of 8, to the point where I had sort of assumed that they just weren't going to use it. Because each of the characters has, like, their own musical cue. Like, Lucy has the most classically Fallout sounding theme, and then, the Brotherhood and Maximus has this, like, weird, like, synth music going on that's kind of weird and sinister. And then, the ghouls' music is just people yelling, which I quite enjoy. But then, Lucy comes into a classroom in Vault 4 because they've taken in a bunch of refugees from Shady Sands after it was destroyed, and they're kind of teaching the history of Shady Sands. And as she's looking through this stuff, the Fallout theme actually starts to weave in for the first time in the show, and it was really effective. It was just a really good use of music, because she pulls out the NCR flag and it comes in with the proper Fallout theme, and it was like, wow, this is affecting me emotionally. Oh, I've been talking for too long. I'm losing my voice here. I do have more that I want to talk about with the show, but I think I'm pushing the limits of what I can record in a single video here, so I guess I'll just wrap up by saying, yeah, it's a really good show, and they're very much setting up a season 2, and I'm looking forward to it if that happens, and yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. I honestly had no expectations for this show whatsoever, so I'm really happy it's good. And all that's left to say is, thank you very much for watching, and a very special thank you to my patrons for your wonderful support. If you'd like to see your name up here or get access to Patreon exclusive videos, which I haven't done in a while, but I'll get back to eventually. It's hard to find the motivation when there's not that many patrons there, but maybe if a lot of you sign up, then more videos will go up there, you never know. And let me know if you want to see more kind of unscripted, just me talking about stuff videos like this, because this is way easier to make than a video essay. It's not as fun to make as a video essay, but it's easy. And I've never actually talked about Fallout before on this channel, so I don't have any Fallout videos to plug, but I actually have no idea what videos to plug this time. I didn't plan this out ahead of time, so there'll be some videos up here to click. They're probably good, so click on one of those.